Now that we're in spring, I got rid of all of my lettuce and I decided it's time to prep this bed for planting for all my spring crops. What was really surprising though, as I harvested the lettuce and I took the last bit of the heads, I noticed how much this has really sank. Now I built these back in August and then I filled them and I just kind of watered them, let the compost settle down, and then I added a little bit more because I knew it would sink. When I did that, this bin or this raised garden bed was completely full with, well, wood chips on the bottom half and then about 6 to 9 inches of compost on top. And now I'm gonna say we're about 9 inches sunken down. So that really shows you how much the plants are actually pulling from the soil in order to create that leafy growth or the fruits or vegetables that we consume. Yes, some of this has sank in more and it's filled in like the wood chip area, but this is a lot that has just gone into the growth of the plants. So that's why I think compost is such a valuable resource and why we really should be composting everything we can. So come on in, I'm gonna show you some pretty interesting things I found when digging in this raised garden bed. So I definitely believe in no tilling and not disturbing any of this, but I really wanted to show what's going on in this soil and how it's changed so much in less than even 1 year. These wood chips that you are seeing on top, these are actually from the bottom. I did have a mouse or a rat coming and digging along the edge, trying to find like a burrow and trying to find himself some food. So they definitely threw some wood chips around, but if we were to move these over, the compost that's underneath, it's definitely broken down a lot more. But as we dig, we can see that this is only 1.5 inches, 2 inches maybe, before we're in the wood chips. The wood chips have definitely started to decay and the compost has worked its way into it. And now it's just creating this beautiful, rich soil that is going to feed my plants long term. What I found to be pretty interesting as I dug down, I'm seeing little fine hair roots from the lettuce. So that means that the lettuce made its way down into the wood chips and was able to pull nutrients from the little bit that probably had decayed while it sat for the first few months, which is just crazy to me that it's happening that fast. Why I think this is crazy is that when I did this, I filled this entire bed up at one time with all wood chips and then compost, and then started to let it sit and like slowly break down. So at some point, the worms from the very bottom found their way up and have come up more than 2.5 feet to the top of this where all this compost is. I don't know where these came from, but they're here and I'm happy. That means this is a good environment and they're helping break down the wood chips and the compost to make it more available for the plants that are going to be in here. All right, so now that I'm done digging down in there and checking on this, I'm going to go ahead and start getting some compost that I made about 6 months ago. And we're going to go ahead and add this in to get this bed prepped for my next round of planting. So this little batch right here, I started making this compost about 9 months ago. So this was a trial of using spent beer grains from a local brewery. And then I also had a lot of palm fronds that I had gotten delivered from a wood chipper. So I took all of the palm frond and then I ran it through my chipper to shred it and turn it more into a fibrous material. And then I added the grain and just kind of lasagnaed that, watered it, and then after a few weeks I turned it and now I have this really lovely compost. There's no large pieces of palm frond and all the beer grain has just completely broken down to where it's not recognizable. So I've just let this sit for a while now It doesn't need to break down anymore because it's pretty well broken down at this point. So now I'm gonna go ahead and use it because this should be some pretty good compost. So if we look at this compost, there's still little bits of material in there, but it's significantly broken down from what it was. And because of where I am, you do get the occasional wood chip. But the reason why I know that this is done is it's not heating up anymore, and I have worms in this. I'm finding worms in here as I dug through this the other day to check and make sure that it's ready. So I know the worms are here because all of the heat is gone, and now they can go in and start eating up all of this beautiful composted organic matter. So let's go ahead and take this over to the compost pile. So I'm not gonna make you watch me fill this entire bed up. It's gonna take a lot more loads to fill this up than I realized, so it's probably gonna take me a while. And then once I'm done, I will come back. All right, so one last thing to do, now that we filled up our raised garden bed, which took me 4 wheelbarrows full, and each wheelbarrow is 6.5 cubic feet. So that means it took 26 cubic feet to fill this back up. Now, one last thing I wanna go ahead and do, now that this bed is filled up though, is I wanna introduce some life into it. And I'm assuming my compost is alive, good and healthy, but it doesn't hurt to give it a little boost. So what I'm gonna do is add in some LAB or lactic acid, and we're just gonna add that into this gallon of water. I'm gonna go ahead and spray it onto the bed. And what this lactic acid will do is work its way into the soil and help with the decomposition of it. So that way, when we do plant into here, there's already some broken down material that will be available to the plants right away. Now all I'm gonna do is just give this a regular watering in with the hose. I do have a carbon filter on it to remove any chlorine, and then that will help wash in the lactic acid bacteria further into the soil, which will help with that breakdown process. After that, I'm just gonna go ahead and let this bed rest for about a week, maybe 2 weeks before I plant into it. I wanna give it time for the bed to settle down, and if there is any heat buildup, that it can dissipate off. And then that should also match up perfectly with my seedlings being ready to plant into this bed. I hope this helps, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.